Thank you, Kamal, for showing up to this room. It is greatly appreciated. Kamal's esoteric background is one of the reasons why I appreciate him so much, and I think you will too. He's traveled to far-off lands and studied and observed mystics and gurus. He spent time in the U.S. military. He's written a best-selling book that has impacted the lives of tens of thousands of readers. He's written angel checks into some of the most important internet companies of our generation. And these are just a few of the things that inspire me to talk a little bit about how he sees the world. There isn't a day that goes by when I hang out with Kamal that he doesn't wield his samurai sword of truth. The clutter, the noise, the fakeness, the contrived behavior, he sees through it all. Perhaps it's all of the travels, all the things he's seen, the people he's learned from, but in this capacity, he has no peer. So I'm going to come right at the question of truth. So Kamal, my friend, why is truth so elusive today?
My friend, I love you. My instinctual response to your question about truth is a question. Well, what is truth? But now that when that popped in mind, I realized, look, that we can just create a whole room about, just called "What is Truth?" Let's skip that for a moment. I think what you're referring to is I have a very, very low tolerance for lack of a better word, bullshit. And we live in a world, a very, very connected world, a very public world, where any clown or any genius, for that matter, is given a bullhorn, and they are actually rewarded for the louder they shout. So when you do that, usually the clowns shout the loudest. And then you have the nature of the human mind, where a mind is full of so much BS. And I don't tolerate that within myself. And trust me, I have plenty of my own. And I one of my things is I work on myself to reduce it. So to put that all together, it's very, very refreshing when you're around people who are just being real, who are not selling you anything, there's no subtle pitch, who are just being who they are. And that's one of the reasons why you and I get along so well, because that's you, dear Brian. You are one of the least bullshit person I've ever met.
Then maybe reframe Brian's question. Why is being real elusive, or telling the truth? Why do people succumb to the bullshit?
I think that's a very good question, and it definitely is a question that I'd like to hear the other people on here talking about. Because I seem to think that people follow the incentive. They act the way they believe that they're most likely to get rewarded. And when they still want something, they act that way. It's easier to be more authentic when you are fulfilled. But when you're still searching, when you're still building, when you're still trying to do things, it's harder.
That's a great point. It does feel easier to live a life of virtue and a life of truth when you don't have yearnings and you feel fulfilled. But at the same time, I think the argument from the truth seekers would be why that yearning will never stop. Suffering will never stop. Why not start now?
I don't disagree with any of the things you've said. In fact, I agree very much that it is better to stick to the truth and be a truthful person, authentic person. I guess I was also trying to explore the reasoning behind how people can be fake and less truthful. And I've got a lot that is going on in my mind about this topic. So I was trying to get deeper, what's going on? Let's eat the meat now. I want the meat.
It's a great conversation. I think the answer, or my answer, one answer to this question of why is the truth so elusive today, is that perhaps it doesn't exist. And what I mean by that is that each individual has their own subjective truth, which is largely driven by their own perspective. So is it possible to get the truth and each person has their own individual subjective version of it. Now, this works, relatively well on an individual basis, but can it be scaled at society level? I mean, can we say that, red pants are really yellow when everybody else thinks they're red? It starts to break down at that point. So you have to have some objective truth in a world full of subjective or, personal truth, individuals. So I think that's one issue with kind of why is it so elusive? Because it's defined differently per person. And as I was listening to some of the other chits, in this room, we talk about bullshit artists, people who have agendas, and I'm guilty. I've had agendas in the past, consciously or consciously. It's just the nature, I guess, or the curse of being human these days. And we always say it's for rewards, but I think it's also largely for needs that the individual hasn't either been able to meet themselves or weren't met for them, during their formative years.
I love both your chits, Pratik. Thank you for sharing. I think you're getting at that meat I was talking about, and I agree with them, and I enjoyed listening to them. They resonated. Thank you.
My father used to say that a man who speaks the truth will be chased from 7 villages, but will be welcomed as a hero if he manages to return to the first. And obviously the metaphor is that power structures want to suppress truth, want to chase the truth tellers out, and they almost always manage to do so because truth is a very lonely profession. But the arc of history bends towards what is provably true, what survives exposure to free markets and nature, and therefore the truth will be revealed in the end, and that's why you get welcomed when you return to the first. The problem is surviving being chased from 7 villages. And the technical definition, the literal definition of an apocalypse is a falling away of illusion to reveal truth. And I think that fits nicely into my dad's adage. My maternal grandmother was a very devout Catholic lady, and my paternal grandmother was a very devout Shiite lady. And so I have a lot of good little quotes from those two traditions. I'm going to share one about truth from my grandma on my mom's side.
Truth is a very lonely profession. Profound. I like that.
You guys are probably familiar with the story of Saul on the road to Damascus and his conversion to Christianity. But the quote is pretty interesting. From obviously it's just derivative oral tradition stories and probably has, been changed a lot. But it goes like this. And immediately there fell from his eyes as it had been scales, and he received sight forthwith and arose and was baptized. I have a framework I could share here, but I don't want to parsagram up the chit stream. So if anyone's interested, let me know.
The truth? You can't handle the truth. And I've actually been thinking about this. It's the end of the day here, listening to some beautiful foreplay here, and I was thinking about truth. Truth is very difficult. So I think let's go via negativa. What is not truth? Them lies. And why do people lie? Well, I seem to think that, at least at this moment, that the reason why people lie is because they've been incentivized to lie. When they told you the truth, when they were truly themselves, when they didn't lie, they were not accepted. So guess what they did? They made stuff up. They became what they were not. And they got what they've always wanted. Them likes, baby. They got the likes. They got the views. We made them liars. Now, I'm not saying all these things is like the ultimate truth. I'm just throwing them out there to just push at this thing. To say maybe, yes, we cannot handle the truth, folks. And so we've created a world of lies. We have not rewarded people when they were telling the truth, so they became liars. And so when you're surrounded by a whole lot of fakers, that puff up the credentials. Ask yourself, maybe that's why you're listening to them. Maybe that's why you like them. And so they get what they want. I'm just being provocative. I'm not really convinced that this is the entire truth, but I'm just throwing it in there. There it is, beautiful people. There it is.
Sifaway comes out of the corner swinging. I love it. I love it.
Guys, I made a mistake on the definition of apocalypse. It's the uncovering of a pot, not the falling away of illusions. Although the whole idea is that you lift the lid off of a pot and you get to see what's in it. So kind of the same thing, pot lid, but falling away of illusion, find out what's there, but not quite right. And it's been bugging me, and I'm glad somebody put this back up in my attention so I could correct it. Sorry about that.
This is a good example where, we talk about how advice is everywhere meaningless, yet it's everywhere. However, what's interesting is that I realize now the best conversations I have ever had in Airchat involved a group of people talking about something they were passionate about, interested in, not respectfully, but in a fun way. It's fun. And then the thing is, that conversation, no one wins, right? You get to this point where you're like, okay, this conversation, there's so many great reasons to start your own company. There's so many great reasons to decide to just work a job for a while or do different things. But at the end of the day, we've gotten to the point where, you can make opposite recommendations and nowhere does one disagree. And that is the natural and beautiful conclusion of where we're at. It's like this whole edifice of disagreement or finding agreement. It actually, it just comes down, everything gets shaken out and all that's left. What makes the big difference is a choice that should be left to an individual and shouldn't be about advice. When I was having the big TCS conversation early on, I got to a point where I was like, okay, I think there's just this one thing that we disagree on and everything else is the same. And, it was fine. I didn't care that he disagreed with me. I still don't care. He didn't care that I disagreed with him. He probably still doesn't care. There's this area that we identified that okay, we disagree here. Now, unfortunately, it turned out that area is some weird tumor in the complex of bad decision making, I think, or, bad decision making in terms of giving advice to people. But that's interesting.